Welcome back, y'all, and happy Sunday. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and I'm your host, Bull. It's time for my day after thoughts and grades from Tennessee versus UTEP. And at the end, I'm going to tell y'all how I think the CFP voting will go coming up on Tuesday, and also how the final voting will go and who Tennessee will end up playing in the first round of the college football playoffs. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so let's start with our coaches' grades. First off, man, we won this game 56-0, and we mixed up several things, right? I mean, there was different route combinations. I saw sail routes. I saw drags. I saw some drag fades, which I absolutely love. We got everybody involved. You know, the vertical passing game really got going. Obviously, Brew gets him 2 tugs. We'll talk about the players here in just a second. But everything to me looked good from an offensive perspective. And then on defense, we played up against the spread a lot better than we have, previously in this season. We played up against Mississippi State. I didn't like some of the things that we did. But in this game, we brought a lot more blitzes. So I saw some different blitz packages. We really brought the heat. I think that we did a pretty solid job for the most part. The coverages looked good, everything, just the entire game plan on offense, defense, special teams. For me, it's an A, okay, for everybody, including Coach Heupel. All right, y'all, now let's take a look at this offensive line. This is from Pro Football Focus. I'm going to be focusing more on the sacks and the pressure rate, things like that. So Cooper Mays, they're saying that he gave up 0 sacks and only 1 pressure on 30 attempts. That's really good. I think he had a great game in run blocking, pass blocking, all that type of stuff. Andre Carrick also had a very, very solid game. Both of those guys have been consistent over the course of this season. Carrick gave up 0 sacks and 0 pressures. Then Lance Heard, they're saying he gave up 1 sack and 2 pressures. I think that he played well, though. That grade, to me, doesn't really indicate the way that he played. He did some really nice things. Now, he does have to work on, I'd say, it's just more of his, fundamental stuff, right? And really all these guys can fix some of their funds, but I think that he played well. So, I'm really not tripping off of those numbers. Then we have Dane Davis, who, playing at right tackle. He played for most of the game. I think he also played very well. You're seeing he gave up 0 everything. Actually, everybody else that we're going to be talking about gave up 0 everything. Now, in this game, Tennessee did ultimately give up 3 sacks. So it feels like those other 2 sacks probably came from our running backs. We'll get to them here in just a minute. But Dane Davis had a really good game. Jackson Lampley, man, he's moving bodies. He looks really good. I'm very, very proud of him. I don't know if this is going to be his last game inside of Neyland, but if it is, I think that he definitely went out with the bang. Spraggs, he played some. He didn't play that much, but he also looks really good. Larry Johnson, man. So look, all of our younger players, I think that they all played very, very well. We talked about this like a couple of days ago with our young offensive linemen. So Larry Johnson and then Jesse Perry, they're the most complete underclass offensive lineman not named Lance Heard. They both look like they are ready to go. And that's huge to say that about a guy like Jesse Perry, who is just a true freshman. But all those young guys, as far as run support goes, man, they are moving bodies in a completely different way. I'm so excited for them to figure out what's going on, because I will say this, they don't really know who to pick up all the time. UTEP kept on running the exact same blitz, and they never picked it up. They did the exact same blitz 5 or 6 times back to back to back, and we never quite figured out how to get that blitz to linebacker. But either way, whenever it comes to just moving bodies, man, they looked really good, all of them. I would say maybe outside of Aiden Bustle. I don't know what's going on with him, because y'all know I was the highest on Aiden Bustle just as far as the offensive linemen go in that 2023 class. But I think with him, maybe there's some confidence issues. I hope that he could get with the guy like Trent Williams, who I believe several of our players from the offensive line went and worked out with last summer. He needs to go work with someone like that, take some of that NIL money and work on his craft just to get his confidence level up, because the skill set is there. He's just not playing very confident. I'm not going to say that he, looked terrible, because he didn't, but he looked about the same as he did maybe earlier in the season. Okay. He might have taken things up just like a notch or two. But, I think the Big Sham, man, just, again, moving bodies look really, really good. Bennett Warren, he's another one. He kind of reminds me of a Lance Heard, just with all of his body movements and things like that. They both need to get with somebody and work on body control. And I could say really the same thing about all of our offensive linemen. We do have a tendency to kind of lunge forward and be off balance, but he actually looked, very, very solid. I think that Brian Grant also looked good. So the offensive line for me is going to get a very solid A. Now let's flip it over and talk about the defensive line. David Hobbs is up at the top. Y'all know I'm paying attention to the sacks and the pressure rate, all that good stuff. So he had no sacks, and he also had, it looks like, no pressures, but he did have 2 hurries. So either way, I think that he played well. He did a really nice job just as far as holding on to his gap, things like that. Jason Jenkins, he did the exact same thing, playing it strong side in. He looked good. Joshua Josephs, man, he had an absolutely incredible game. I'm super, super proud of him. He just continues to flash in such a major way on a couple of, critical 3rd and short, or whatever, fourth and short down and distance. Him as a run stopper, that was beautiful. And he also did a good job of getting pressure on the quarterback. Bryson Easton, he's still playing outstanding. Big E, he's playing very well. James Pierce he's so different, right? Like, I mean, and we all know this, but he is such a dude. I mean, it's impossible to block him one-on-one. He's so shifty. He's so quick. He did have 2 sacks in this game. He's super, super special. And I don't know how many pressures he did have in this game, but it's not showing the pressures on this one. But I also think that Tyree West, dude, he is so twitchy. He didn't have that real twitch last season, right? Like up into that Iowa game in the Citrus Bowl. I didn't see a whole lot of twitch and burst from him, but he definitely has it now. So I'm very much looking forward to him hopefully coming back next season. But yeah, he got, very close to getting some sacks. What he has to do, though, is be able to kind of slow himself down some and hold on to that quarterback. Once he starts to do that, he's going to be a huge problem. Jackson Moy, he got moved around some, but it kind of felt like he was falling. And this is something that I have seen with our tackles just a little bit, and really even with the offensive line, dude. I think our offensive line falls around more than anybody else's offensive line does. So we got to work on some balance, man. Like, I don't know who the strength coach is, but he's got to get this team, especially up front. We got to get our balance together. I think the big O, man, he had a great game. Very, very impressed with what he's doing as a senior. He is going to make himself some money, as this season ends. Big Don Bailey also played very, very well. Caleb Herring, he had some offsides penalties. He's definitely got to work on that. That's frustrating for me because that's just all about discipline. Watch the daggone football, son. That's all you got to do. Watch the ball and then go. Like, he's got to kind of slow himself down. But he did play, he did play pretty well. Jamal Wallace, I think that he looked okay. He still has some, he still has to get stronger and not get moved around as much. Nathan Robinson, he looked pretty good. Omar Norman Lott, he had a pretty quiet game. He didn't play as much. But, I think that he still looked solid just in doing what he always does, man. Like, he just affects the game in a different way. Carson Gentle, man, he looked really good. I'm super proud of him. Kellen Lindstrom, he's got to gain some more weight, but you can see that talent there. So we got a whole lot of young guys involved, but I'm going to give our entire front four on defense a very solid A. All right, now let's talk about our skill players, starting off with Nico Iamaleava. He went 17 of 23. That's about 62%. So that's close to his season average, only 209 yards, but he was averaging 9.1 yards per attempt, which I think is really good, okay? 4 touchdowns, obviously no interceptions. And then if you come on down to his rushing numbers, he had 7 carries for 36 yards. Y'all know that with ESPN, they will throw those sacks in there and all that type of stuff. But I think that he looked really good just managing this football game. Didn't start off the best, but once he got into his groove, you saw him, taking a lot off of the football. He had very good command of this offense and, using his legs whenever we needed him to. And then, also, I think that Navy Schuler came in. He did some pretty nice things. Gaston Moore, he did a good job of just controlling this offense. We'll kind of talk about a touchdown pass that was missed. I don't think was on him, but I'm going to give the entire quarterback room an A. Now let's talk about our rushing game with our running back. So obviously D. Samp, man, he played outstanding. 11 carries for only 77 yards. I thought that he had more than that. So averaging about 7 yards per carry with 1 touchdown. Would have been good to get him maybe a few more carries, but at the same time, we know it's all about winning the national title and not so much about guys padding their stats and breaking records and all that type of stuff. But he is now, if I'm not mistaken, the new single rushing touchdown leader for Tennessee. And I do believe that he's catching up to Tim Tebow's rushing record for a single season. So that's really big. I think that he played very well, picking up blitzes, things like that. Peyton Lewis ran the football well. He did miss a blitz earlier in the game. We talked about that last night, but after that, it seems like he understood who to pick up. So I'm going to give the entire running back room a very solid A. Oh, and then also, too, I didn't talk about Cam Seldon, but he also looked very good, coming in running. He only averaged 4.9 yards per carry, but I love what he did because a lot of his yards actually came after contact. Now, I talked about how well the young offensive line played, but they didn't always know who to pick up. So there were some players that were unblocked that Cam Seldon just straight up ran through. And it wasn't just one person. It was, most of the time too. So he's going to be just fine, man. That running back room is going to be fine. Like I said, I'm going to give them a very solid A. Now let's come on down to our wide receivers. All right, I think that they played well. And I did say that I would touch on a touchdown that Gaston Moore missed. That was from Chaz Nimrod, who ran out of bounds. He's got to do a much better job of understanding where he is on the field, because if he stays in bounds, obviously that's 6. So some of that stuff I think is going to go back to coaching. And I'm not trying to, say that Coach Pope isn't a good wide receivers coach, because I do think that he is. But he's got to kind of drive home some of these smaller details with these players, or he's got to find a way for them to receive it better. Either way, Brew, obviously, man, getting him 2 tugs. Excellent game from him. Always does a really good job just of being a dog, going out, blocking on the outside, things like that. And then, Mike Matthews, dude, he almost had a touchdown, but if it wasn't for Daggum holding stays, going out there and putting his arms out when he didn't have to, he would have got him 6. But I love what I see from him just all around. I watched him very closely throughout this game just to see if I could figure out what's missing. I don't really see anything. He's a dog that needs to be playing more, so I'm happy that he did get some burn in this game. And then outside of that, man, I think that Squirrel played very well. Braylon Staley came in. He did some nice things way towards the end of this game. Dante had a drop or two. I don't know what happened with Chris Brazzell. Maybe he was kind of banged up. We just let him rest. But either way, I'm going to give the wide receiver room, again, a very solid A. Now let's talk about Tennessee's tight ends. Miles Kitselman, Holden Stays, Ethan Davis, all those guys, man, just from a blocking perspective, especially Miles Kitselman. I mean, he's getting several pancakes a game. I don't know how many I counted throughout the course of this film, but it was at least 3 or 4 of them. So he's doing an absolutely outstanding job there. Obviously, also catching that football well. Same thing can be said about Holden Stays. And then, Ethan Davis, he's looking good. He still needs to get more physical. And I think for him, it's going to be more of like a mindset thing. Not quite sure if that's something that we can kind of like coach into him, but sometimes that light just kind of turns on. Once it does turn on for Ethan Davis, he is 100% going to be an NFL tight end. And he could go, on the first couple of days because he has that sort of talent. Also, I think that Charlie Browder, who came in, you're not going to see him on the stat sheet. He came in way towards the end, but he looked really good too. I believe he's going to be out of eligibility after this season. But either way, all of our tight ends looked good. I'm going to give them an A+. Now, let's come on down to the defense, all right? And we're going to start off up at the top with Boo Carter and the star position. Y'all can see that Boo led us in tackles. Boo is absolutely special. Honestly speaking, I think that if he was eligible to go to the NFL draft this season, he would get drafted. Like, that's how well he's played this season, because it's not just about him on defense. It's also about the special teams. We all, we told y'all he's special with the football in his hands. And, we told you the same thing about Travis Hunter. We told you the same thing about Caleb Downs. And really, you could go all the way back to Coach Prime, like whenever he played. The best route that I've ever seen run by a wide receiver in my life was from Deion Sanders with the Dallas Cowboys in practice. He ran an out at a 90-degree angle, full speed, did not slow down, not a step, didn't take any false steps. That's literally like 99% impossible to do. So my whole point here is that really good players in the secondary are typically very good on offense as well. But he had a really, really good game, and so did Christian Harrison. I mean, both of those guys just coming up, setting edges, just being physical, just being dogs. I'm going to give that room an A+. This might be the second or third A+ that they got from me on the season. But now let's come on down. Okay, let's talk about safeties, just because Christian Charles is next. I think he played very, very well, especially, whenever you're talking about run support, things like that. He looked good doing it. He looked good in coverage. I think that Will Brooks looked good. The only thing, though, about Will Brooks is we, kind of touched on this earlier, that I was concerned with is what happens whenever he's in, one-on-one coverage and he's pressed up at the line of scrimmage, especially playing more like in that slot area. He doesn't do a very good job of keeping the wide receivers from getting an easy release off the football. And so it makes him look bad. Now, they didn't throw the ball to him in one of those situations, but players were open. So that's not a good thing. But just as far as everything goes, he did his job. He did what he was supposed to do. He's always physical. He's all, even if it's off of blitzes, it doesn't matter what it is. He does a really, really sound, fundamental job. So I'm proud of him. I think that Andre Turntime played well. Coming down, run support, coverage wasn't always perfect, but looked really good. We had guys like Slaughter coming in, with some of these younger players. He looked really good. I think 15 looked really good. So the safeties, I would say as a whole, man, they played very well. I'm going to go with a very solid A. Now, let's talk about our linebackers, because next we have Jalen Smith. And Jalen Smith, dude, this is the best game that I think he's played all season long. I think that he's just as good as Arion Carter at this point. I saw the speed. He did a beautiful job picking up running backs coming out of the backfield. He's showing that he understands what to do, and now he's playing so much faster. He's just a natural linebacker, just getting into his run fits, not getting blocked, things like that. He looked great. I think that Arion Carter also played very well. Caleb Perry played well. Jeremiah Telander, he did a lot better than I thought just watching it live. He did a lot of very, very nice things. So we had some walk-on guys come in like Eli Purcell, who I think looks really, really good. He actually probably should be rotating in a little bit more. I think that he used his speed well. He does a beautiful job of just, like not getting blocked. He gets downhill, gets into his fits, and he slows things down. But he can also play more sideline to sideline. So I love seeing that. 33, he also came in. He looked really good playing at linebacker. But the main guy that I want to talk about with these linebackers, y'all, is Jordan Burns. Dude, as a true freshman, and Pete talked about it, he came in with like a minute left to go in this game. But man, he's a natural. Honestly speaking, just from the way that he moves, he looks better than any other linebacker on this entire team. He's going to be a stud. He's only about 215, 220 pounds. So he's got to get bigger, but he has missed a whole lot of time this season. But if he can get up to, we'll say, about 230, 235 and maintain the way that he moves, he's going to be all SEC. Okay. He's going to be, like a first round draft pick. That's how good he looks. He's absolutely outstanding. And I think that our linebacker room, because Edwin Spillman might be back this weekend, but I think that our linebacker room for next season is going to be the deepest that we've had in a very long time. You definitely would have to go back to like the 90s, maybe like the early 2000s to see a room that's as deep as that one's going to be. It's going to be about as deep, I think, as our front four is on defense this season, right? Like obviously not with that many people, but just from a sheer, hey, there's no drop off whenever we're rotating players in. I think is going to be very similar to that. Now, we also have to talk about our cornerbacks because, dude, let me tell you right here, right now, we have the best cornerback duo in this entire country. Okay. Like we've got two guys that are playmakers, that are physical, that are good in coverage, whether it's man, whether it's zone. I mean, they're just absolutely outstanding. And then, we also have Six who comes in off the bench and he does some really nice things too. So I'm super, super proud of this team, obviously going up against UTEP, but we looked a lot better versus UTEP than Georgia did versus UMass. And UTEP would definitely beat UMass. So I would give our entire defense, honestly speaking, a very, very solid A. So cornerbacks get an A, safeties get an A, and linebackers get an A. All right, y'all, now let's talk about the CFP rankings. This is about how I think things will look on Tuesday. So what you're going to see is where the team is going to be ranked, but then next to it, you're going to see where they would be seated at. So Oregon would be number one, also seated number one. Ohio State would be number two, but seated at number five. Texas would be number three, seated at number two. Penn State would be number four, seated at number six. Notre Dame's going to be number five, seated at number seven. Now, keep in mind, just because Notre Dame doesn't play inside of a conference, so the highest that they could be ranked is at number six. Miami is number six, seated at number three. UGA is number seven, seated at number eight. Tennessee, our Volunteers, will be number eight, seated at number nine. So to get that first round home game, you've got to be 5 through 8. So for this week, Tennessee would just miss it. Next at number 9, we have Boise State, who would be seated at number 4. SMU would be at number 10. They also are going to be seated at number 10. Then we have Indiana's ranked at number 11 and also seated at number 11. At 12, I'm going to have Clemson. But then, just as far as the seeding goes, which is what actually matters, it would be the Big 12 champions. So let's come on over and I'm going to show you right here. These are my rankings and seedings. Okay, really more so seedings of how I think things will play out whenever it's all said and done. So this is after the conference championships and all that good stuff. I have Oregon winning the Big 10 championship. So I have them at number 1. Okay, they would get that first round bye. Texas would be winning the SEC championship versus Georgia because we all know that Georgia has clinched their berth. So that also means that I have Texas beating A&M, right? So all those things will be important to keep in mind, but Texas will be getting a first round bye. Then we have at number 3, Miami. I have them winning the ACC. I don't have any other ACC team getting in. I only have one. Next at 4, I have Boise State. And then at number 5, I have our Tennessee Volunteers. So we would get to face up against the number 12 seed, which would be whoever wins the Big 12 championship. And you have to absolutely love that. Now, I think that I got this stuff right because it does feel like the 5th rated or the 5th highest rated conference champion. I feel like they automatically move to 12. That's how they have been doing it. I don't know if that's going to stick whenever it's, all said and done on the final one. But if it remains the same, then that's a great matchup, man. We get to host like a BYU or, Colorado, Arizona State. I love our chances versus any of those teams, but I would probably prefer to not play Arizona State because they're doing some nice things right now. Either way, Tennessee should definitely be able to roll in that game. So next, we would have Notre Dame at number 6. And again, Notre Dame cannot be a top 5 team, just because they don't have a conference. So the highest that they could be is at number 6, if I'm not mistaken. So they would be facing up against Georgia. That could be a pretty solid game. I do think that Georgia would win, hoping that we can see Georgia again. But then next, we would have Indiana playing up against Penn State. I mean, that game is almost like a toss-up. Now, I love James Franklin, but I don't know if they're going to beat Indiana. I think that's going to be a really, really good game. And obviously, Indiana would be hosting it. And then we have Ohio State versus South Carolina. Yep, I have South Carolina making it in. just because A&M will have just lost their third or fourth game, something like that, to Texas. So that would bump them down. I think that South Carolina will also be coming off of a really big win versus Clemson. So I do have South Carolina actually making it to the college football playoffs. But this is about the way that I think the first round could end up looking. Obviously, man, like if we learned anything over this weekend is that so many things can change, but Tennessee should most definitely get in. All we got to do is handle business versus Vandy, and I'm about to get to work on all the matchup breakdowns and all that good stuff that we will be bringing to you live. We're not live, but we will be bringing it to you on Monday, so we hope that y'all will tune in for that. But that's it for this one. Please share your thoughts and comments down in the comments section, and as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. See y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.